So if you are new here, welcome. Thanks for coming by. This is our introductory course that's going to just bring you into some of the basic principles that are going to be the foundation of all of what we do at Script Camp and give you like an overview of the entire thing that's going to be running for, until until late April. So this class is March 13th. There are 6 class meetings, essentially giving you those 6 weeks and then the week up until the week after to finish your pilot script if you want to stay sort of on the benchmarks or deadlines of the class.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the TV Pilot Bootcamp.
Yes. So, is week 1, the official week 1, a paid class or free? Alright, thank you. Right. I'm just gonna type.
Hi, Connor. Can you hear me? Hi. I came a little late, but my goals as a writer right now are to explore different types of screenwriting, whether for TV or for larger screen, and try to figure out which work best for my own project. And I have not written a TV pilot before. Yeah, learning more about the format, and then that way I can decide which way I want to do my own story. Yeah, I have two, and then I've been to some of your other Discord events, and I thought I wanted to do a screenplay, movie, but I think it was you were talking to me on the live call. We were thinking maybe it might be a series, a TV series. So anyway, so I just need to learn more about writing for, TV and screen and figure out what works best. Okay, thank you.
Too low. I hope they can hear me now. My gosh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't notice that my audio was down. I hope that our streamers have not all been totally tuning out because they couldn't hear anything. Hello, streamers. There will be a recording of this, I will say, which should have, better complete audio. Hopefully you can hear us now. So let's see. Yeah, can you hear now? I hope you guys can. So Goddess Fight says, why did I think you were in South Carolina? That might be because you joined via a meetup group that we have many sort of meetup groups that are centered in different virtual locations all around the globe. I think there's 7 of them at this point. So that means that we aren't actually in any of those places. You can just have a meetup group that is centered in a city, so people looking for events in that city will find it. We are centered and based in Los Angeles. Micro says, I seem like a Cali guy or Arizona. Yeah, we're in Los Angeles. And if you want to be a screenwriter as well, you should plan to move to Los Angeles. Of course, this is the place to be. If you want to write for TV especially, although the pandemic has to some extent changed how this is working, and you, there are virtual rooms still going right now. I think the majority of showrunners are drifting and gravitating back towards doing in-person work and having rooms be meeting physically over time. So in a couple years, I don't think we're going to be doing virtual rooms as much, and you should plan to move to Los Angeles if you want to write professionally for TV. Okay, so what else? Pilot finished in 6 weeks. Will this draft be good? No, probably not. Especially if it's your first one you've ever written. It won't be good. And that's fine, and that's why we have to, so much of what we need to emphasize here is that ideas don't matter all that much. This is more about building those muscles, and this is not about making some perfect script. This is more about, this is like going to the gym. We call it, we're not digging for gold. You're lifting weights. This is to build the skills necessary to put you on the road to being a writer, not to end up with some amazing pilot at the end of it. And you shouldn't expect that any individual project should be amazing or needs to be amazing in any case. Goddess Flight says, guess I'll be leaving Atlanta. Well, there's a fair amount of film production in Atlanta, I will say. If you want to get on set, and I think Adult Swim is centered there as well, so animation, perhaps. Atlanta's not the worst place to be in terms of where you want to be for screenwriting and movie making. It's probably third or fourth on the list. I'm going to say fourth if we go from LA, maybe New York or Austin, and then I guess those are tied a little bit depending on who you ask. And then Atlanta would be the next one down. So LA is going to be the place to probably go, though. Spraj003 says, what about in London? I don't know anything about the UK film industry. I can't even begin to answer that, unfortunately. Maybe there's some other members on Script Camp who might be able to answer those questions, or in Script Hive as well, which is another server that we're very friendly with. We're not actually part of Script Hive, but we do a lot of cross-promotion with them, so look it up, Script Hive, Hive. That has a much more sort of broad international server user base than us, so you're going to be able to find more people in London there, I think. But feel free to ask in Script Camp if you are looking for country-specific advice that will be able to give you, from people who will be able to help you with it more. Okay, so, yeah, does the script have to be good? No. Well, we're writers because we have good ideas and believe in them, but you have to untether from your ideas in order to be a working professional screenwriter. There's just no way around it. So every project is going to go through many changes. There are many other cooks in the kitchen, and almost never is there just one sort of singular voice or vision responsible for how a movie turns out, unless you are writing and directing and funding the entire thing yourself. In which case, you can do whatever you want. But the point is, there's almost always going to be different voices, different interpreters, different collaborators. It has to be bought and developed and then directed and then performed, and every one of those things, and then edited, and every one of those things is going to take it in potentially different directions from what you intended. So you have to start untethering from your ideas, untying yourself from these things as, that's a perfect idea and it can never change, or I have to do that and get it right. That's my life's work. I've been working on that for 20 years. You have to adopt this workman-like bricklayer mentality where you are making a long brick road and you don't have to agonize over whether any individual brick is going to be a masterpiece or not. A road maker's work is exhibited in the road, not in an individual brick. Does that make sense? So you have to make the road. Don't get too attached to ideas. I just went over all this. This is the best case scenario. Your idea will be bought and made into a show where maybe you're the showrunner. That can potentially happen. Usually you're going to be paired with somebody. It's extremely unlikely, if you haven't been working in TV writers' rooms for many years. So the point is, most pilots are going to be more like writing samples that are going to act as a vehicle to get you attention and reads and potentially meetings with management, who can then develop a pilot with you that they can then send out for staffing. Like, we can go over that whole process, but it's basically a writing sample that's going to help you get a manager. You have to do really well in those staffing meetings, and then you will be a junior level staff writer on a show that will work your way up for years until you can become a writing producer, at which point, eventually, with mentoring and help and luck, you might be able to be considered to run your own show. So this is why we don't really spend that much time on planning out, what are my season arcs going to look like? What am I going to do in season 3 or season 4? Like, you have to just get really obscenely good at writing pilots to even get in the room on these things. Don't worry about the arcs of the show. Like, the fundamentals of becoming a writer are so much more important to focus on here. So, what else? So showrunners and producers are looking at your pilots, specifically pilots, and not these what we call spec episodes. And this is like essentially a fan fiction episode of an existing show. Usually something that's still on the air, is critically pretty well liked, and is in its 2nd to 4th season, is what they usually say to write for these. But there's almost not a lot of reasons to. There's not a lot of great reasons to write these nowadays, except for entering some contests and fellowships like the Nickelodeon Writing Fellowship. That will be your a contest that I think requires 2 different specs, or possibly a spec and a pilot. But for the most part, in the vast majority of cases, people are looking for original pilots nowadays, not an episode of Star Trek or an episode of The Simpsons, but like, it can be useful to have those as well for practice in writing in someone else's voice, and also just to apply to certain very specific things, or maybe some showrunner will be looking for that at some point. But you should be focusing on writing original pilots if you want to work for TV. Let's look at this here. So remember, your main objective here is to not come up with a perfect script. It is to become a generator of unlimited ideas and develop the skills necessary to execute them consistently on a quick time frame and with a high level of quality. If that sounds easy, then it shouldn't. It's not. This is far from easy to do any of these things, but like the most important early step you can take is just detaching from any individual, putting all your eggs in any individual basket, and just saying, I am going to become a writer. I'm not going to become a person who has written one perfect thing. Yeah, this is the same basics here. All right, we get the idea. So, why do you want to write a pilot in the first place? Let me take the chat off real quick. Why do we want to write a pilot in the first place? So, the answer is to get really good at writing pilots is the most common one. And secondarily, to work up to the point where you can get a writer's assistant job or start placing highly in contests and fellowships, so that you might be able to get the attention of a manager who can then develop a pilot with you, who can then send it out during staffing season, and all these things that I just went over. So the main reason is to get really good at writing pilots, because there's no way that your first pilot is going to be a masterpiece. It's going to take many to get to the point. You have to get the bad scripts out of the way, I usually kind of say, in order to get to the good ones. So don't worry if your first couple are bad. Everyone's first couple are bad, and we learn and we move on and we improve. You've got to, the most important things you can be doing to improve your skills in the meantime are reading professional work. At least I recommend 3 scripts a week, either pilots or features. Remember, these are meant to be consumed in the same amount of time that it takes, more or less, to watch that thing. And if you can make time to watch 3 episodes of TV in a week, then you can make time to read 3 episodes of TV in a week. And we have many resources here and many links that can give you whole directories of professional level spec work in terms of features, and also pilots, some of which have been produced and some of which have not been produced. So we just have some nice links to directories that will give you plenty of things to read. The problem should never be, I can't find something to read. Yeah, bricklayer metaphor, I think we get it. Don't worry about any single brick. Let's build the road. Okay, so what are some of our favorite shows and pilots? And are you writing something that is deliberately in the style of the thing that you're a big fan of? Or are you doing something that's kind of the opposite of that to try to branch out? Or are you trying to do something that you've never done before? What are some of our favorites? And why, of course. I'll start, and while you guys are typing in things, some of my favorite shows of all time, I really love Fargo on FX, and I think that's a fantastic pilot. It's so cinematic and tense and interesting, and takes themes from the movie and like kind of reimagines them in a different context, and gives us characters that resemble ones from the movie, and the story in general kind of like interacts with the movie without repeating it, and kind of uses your expectations of things that will happen because they happened a certain way in the movie to in fact subvert those expectations. And it just is consistently surprising and mysterious and funny and dark, and it's just a great pilot. It's one of my favorite of all time. Goddess Flight says Seinfeld, Xena, and Revenge. All right, awesome. So these are I think Revenge was a like a crime mystery on NBC in like 2007-ish or something like that. I could be wrong on that. But Seinfeld and Xena are in fact long-running shows that are sort of more what we call status quo shows. Like they don't really have big arcs of stories that you need to like watch everything in order to follow along. So are these pilots specifically that you remember from these and enjoyed, or is it just kind of like the shows in general? Just the shows. Okay, yeah. Maybe the pilots are particularly good. I will say though, pilots have a reputation for kind of stumbling out. Yeah, Seinfeld pilot sucked, you say. Exactly. So let me put the chat back up. So yeah, pilots do have this reputation for kind of stumbling right out the gate because there's so many things to do in a pilot, and there's so many ways it can go wrong, and like ultimately a lot of directions kind of change after the pilot is shot. And maybe they recast some actors, and maybe they change directors, and like just so much can change after the pilot happens that rarely is the pilot really indicative of the quality or even like the tone necessarily of the rest of the show. So yeah, it's rarely anyone's favorite episode, and a lot of shows take a season or two to sort of find their footing. But all we can do is write the best pilots possible, and you know all those other challenges are kind of other people's departments. All we can do is focus on the things that we can control, which are just fantastic storytelling, dialogue, characters, all these things that you know, that's the writer's job. Some more comments. Micromedia says, for me, it's Timeless and Quantum Leap. Timeless, 2 seasons plus finale special. Quantum Leap, 5 seasons. Awesome. Okay, big sci-fi fan. Nacho says, favorite pilot scripts, Servant and Breaking Bad. Yeah, Servant is very good. I just watched the first season of that recently on Apple TV. Severance on Apple TV, which just started a couple weeks ago, has a fantastic pilot as well, and I recommend watching that. Nacho says, favorite shows, Lost, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, Always Sunny, Money Heist, and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Cool, good, solid mix of many different, I think almost every one of those is a different genre. Oh, I guess Curb and Always Sunny are both sort of sitcoms, but, and I guess Breaking Bad and Money Heist are both crime dramas, but one is more like a crime thriller. So, yeah, good. Nacho has a broad array of interests, clearly. Larkin says, Burn Notice, Firefly, Haunting of Hill House, great pilots. Yeah, definitely. Firefly especially, one of my faves that just, like, that is one that almost feels like a movie in and of itself, which is just fantastic. Micromedia says, I don't think anyone except me watched Timeless. Oh, also on NBC in the, 2012 era? Or was that more recent? I can't actually really remember. But yeah, that was, it's recent. Okay. But yeah, that was like a time travel action kind of show, 2016 to 18 on NBC. I remember the basics of it. I don't think I watched it though. Goddess Flight says, does Curb even have a script? I think they have to have something. That might be one of those like partially improvised shows. But I think they still, when it comes to a pilot, I would guess that they had more of a script, and then they sort of found the rhythm of it as it goes. Shows like The League are kind of like this too. If you want to do a show like that, you basically just have to still write a really solid pilot. You can't like leave pages blank and be like, go ahead and make it up. Okay, so these are some great answers here. Let's look at our overview of the pilot slideshow for the rest of class today. We have an hour and a half, and remember the latter half of this class is mostly dedicated to giving, or I should say maybe at this point, the last like 45 minutes of class is going to be dedicated towards looking at your log lines and giving you feedback to try to refine those as much as possible. So until we get there, you should be fiddling and working with them on your sticky notes or on your Google Doc or whatever, so that by the time we get to that point, you're ready to copy and paste it. You're ready to tell us the genre, title, if you have one, and one sentence that describes basically what it's about. It's okay if it's not a perfectly formed, template-ready logline. Just give us whatever you've got so that we can start helping you get your show into place for next week. Okay, so we'll start with ground rules of what kinds of stuff you should be picking for the class and things that you should just need to know. We'll define what spec means and kind of the difference there. It doesn't really matter that much. I kind of went over it a little bit, spec episodes, and the difference between that and pilot. And just the word spec just means different things that are confusing. TV writing basics, so that is going to be like how rooms work and stuff like that. We'll briefly go over because mostly we're not going to be worrying about the dynamics of writers' rooms, which is like what you need to worry about when you're 10 years into this, basically. If you're just starting out, focus on getting fantastically good at writing pilots. We'll talk about time slot and format, genre, premise and status quo, which are the two different like sort of storytelling styles of show. And then we'll go to loglines, series logline and pilot logline. Both very important. Try to get both by the end of today down if you can. If you can't, then at least get yourself on the kind of road to revising yours or to putting one together for the first class meeting, which is next week. Okay, so where is my slideshow? There we go. So, ground rules. No true stories. Anthologies, soap operas, rewrites, or adaptations. This is to write a brand new pilot from scratch. If you want to do a rewrite of something, or you wrote a book, or like you have some other source material, you should probably go with our rewrite class, which is going to be Saturdays 12 to 2. This is, try to do an original, brand new idea in this course. No time travel. Just trust me. And probably don't do a historical, because they usually require, I will say the exception will be unless you've done research already, or maybe, I don't know, if you were like a doctoral student of Egyptology or something and you want to write a show set in Egypt, you'll have an easier time of that. But normally historicals just require so much research that it makes it a little bit infeasible to do them in a 6-week time frame unless you have some kind of foundation in that, like in the basics of that. So probably don't do one. I'm not gonna shoot anyone down who wants to do one of these things, but like I've never seen a student attempt a script camp class with a time travel script and be able to finish it without getting confused, overwhelmed, or completely lost. So I know some people will take this as a challenge, and then they will, I'm telling you, don't do it. Logan says, I missed the start of this. Was it how to write a TV pilot logline? We are getting there. We're not actually there yet. We're on the ground rules still, but we will arrive there by the end of the class, so feel free to stick around. Let's see, what else? Ground rules. Get used to the idea of sharing work, and also let me say, speaking out loud is really important to get used to this idea. If you're working in the industry, you're not going to be able to type behind a screen the whole time. You're going to be in rooms with people. You have to talk to them, or maybe in virtual rooms, but regardless, you have to talk a lot, and screenwriting is a very, 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 very social job. A TV writing is an extraordinarily social job. So, like, who you are as a person. And Micromedia says, I gotta socialize. You have to do more than socialize. You have to be in rooms with people for like 16-hour days for months at a time. And they have to like you. And you need to get along with people and be nice and be energetic and be sociable, and be able to give and receive feedback gracefully and quickly and get your ideas shot down and be cool about it. And like, it's if you want to be the kind of reclusive writer, then you should write novels and not TV, because TV is intensely collaborative at every level. So get used to the idea of sharing ideas even at the early stages, and like maybe you'll get you will feel like, oh, I just got that thing shot down that I liked. You need to get used to that and get over that idea. I'll be nice about it. Most showrunners are not going to be super nice about it. Get used to this and get used to speaking out loud and articulating and being able to verbally summarize things, and just work on your being what we call being good in a room. It's like the 80% of how you're going to get a TV job is going to be who you are as a person, like how amazing you are in the room with other people and interacting with them. So acclimate to this. Please use a real name or anything that sounds like a real name instead of a username if you're going to be in the course. Like for this free intro class, you don't have to for today, but if you're going to be joining us for next week for the first official start, you can't use screen names in the industry, so you must use a first name. It doesn't, if you for some privacy reason you really don't want to use a first name, you can use your middle name or a nickname or something like that, but we want to be able to call you something that is not like an Xbox Live gamer tag, basically. Let's look at what. So that's all the ground rules. Any questions about those ground rules before we move on? We have a question. How do I change nicknames? You can right-click on your name in Discord and press rename. Or change nickname, actually, it says, yeah. So you can find your name either on the right side of the screen or in the voice channel. On mobile. I'm not totally sure on mobile. You don't have to worry about it for now. Like, just try to get it in place by next week, or you can tell us what you want us to call you in the chat. Don't worry about it too much. Yeah, or Nacho can change your name for you if you just let us know. Tom. Okay, thank you. Other questions on the ground rules? Let me bring the ground rules back up so you can look at them. Jazzy says I'm not at work, or I'm at work, not working, so can't talk until I'm on break, which will hopefully be when we're talking about log lines. That's fine. If there's like some reason you can't speak out loud, that's always okay. Just let us know.
I have a question, not really about the ground rules, but in the feature bootcamp at the start, just so like everyone was on the same page about like kind of the realities and myths of being a feature screenwriter. You said that it's less than the chance of getting into the MLB, which of course is extremely low.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think being a TV writer is like slightly higher, slightly lower, or?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's more TV than there ever has been with all the streaming networks, and everyone wants sort of original series now. So there are more jobs than there's ever been, but there's also higher competition than there's ever been, and there are like a lot of barriers of entry. So yeah, there's a lot of walls, but there's a lot of there's a lot of ladders, I guess I should say. I don't know if I can answer if it's harder than being a feature screenwriter. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say it will be slightly easier than being a feature screenwriter, just because not that many features get made every year. That's not to say that the only way you're successful as a feature writer is if your movies are getting made, and there's like, you can be getting paid and working as a writer even if your movies are never coming out on screen. Don't get me wrong. But so yeah, there's more TV than movies. It's going to be like a few percentage points easier to be a TV writer. Sure.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Focused on ground rules or basics of the course or of the industry? Tom says 2017 was a weird year for time travel shows. I couldn't tell you. I don't know if I've ever really watched time travel shows. I've watched shows with time travel in them, like Lost. Dancho says, also shows hire multiple writers sometimes for comedy because the writer's room is big. Yeah, comedy is always going to have bigger rooms than drama. Okay, let's keep going. Feel free to write in the chat if you have more questions as we go forward. But so in the US, shows are written by staffs for the most part. There's exceptions to that, but usually that staff is going to consist of the lowest level, which is staff writers that are overseen by a kind of hierarchy of writing producers. And that is all overseen by the showrunner, who is the head of writing and also the head of production. So the most important person there, the absolute heart and guiding voice of the show. It is an incredibly long road to become a showrunner. So I wouldn't worry about how am I going to do that in the next couple of years. The number of staff writers can vary anywhere from 2 or 3 on smaller limited series and sort of more singular voice shows like the Terror on IMC, all the way up to 15 plus for big comedy, sketch, and late night and things like that. Comedy writers' rooms are, like I mentioned, going to be bigger than drama. So how do you get staffed on TV? One track is by starting as a production assistant. You usually have to physically be in LA for this, meaning that you're going to start as an office PA. Which usually you can get either through a referral or recommendation, or sometimes just cold applying. You can get an office PA job, but it helps if you've had other PA credits, for instance, on set or things like that, or other just office entertainment industry jobs. From office PA, you can, in theory, move to, if you really express an interest and do that for several years, and you know the right people, and everyone likes you, and you're nice and cool, you can perhaps be recommended to be a writer's PA. Moving, and then after perhaps several years of that, move from writer's PA to writer's assistant, and then to showrunner's assistant, and then they will perhaps begin to read your scripts and work with you and like mentor and tutor you until the point where you are ready to be moved to staff if your show doesn't get canceled, if nothing goes wrong, and if you don't make anyone mad and no one hates you. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and you have to really, really, really grind and work at this for many years to go that route, and you have to be in LA to do this almost always. If you're not in LA and you want to be an assistant on TV, then I don't believe it's possible. I'm not 100% sure how to help you. Unless your parent is a showrunner or something like that, you're probably not going to be able to. Okay, so the other track is by getting obscenely good at writing pilots, as well as other things to kind of build out your portfolio, because it's not just pilots that showrunners are looking at to find people to bring on, because TV is so much, it's considered to so much more be about your individual voice and your background and history and how you grew up and who you are, that sometimes they will scout playwrights or stand-ups or people with sketch shows or web shows or anything like that for TV. So that's potentially possible. So like have other types of writing that is out there and getting attention in the world and showing that you're funny, or you're making, if you want to write for horror shows, make horror shorts on YouTube. If you want to make comedy shows, make sketches and put them online. Stuff along, or if you want to write action shows or like action adventure shows, you should be making cartoons or action shorts. Like, you should be showing off the thing that you do in the world in such a way that people can find it and appreciate it. What else? There's no point in then getting those meetings, though, if you don't have fantastic pilots to back it up. So that's what this course is about, and also just so much what your first couple of years as a screenwriter should be about, is just building those skills so that, and building out a portfolio of fantastic work, which is not easy and takes a long time. So that maybe should be the motto for this course. That should be written on the banner over our entry doors. This isn't easy and takes a long time. Screenwriting sucks. I'll say it. You heard it here, folks. Screenwriting sucks. And if you, I don't mean it sucks as in like, it's not the thing that I want to do myself or that I do myself, or I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you will come to, if you have not already come to realize how difficult and Sisyphusian the industry is, then you will quickly come to realize that. And you should, if you hear all that and you're still like, well, of course, but I still have to do it, then you're in the right place, and you should. So like, look at our banner. This isn't easy and takes a long time. Let's look at this next slide here. So yeah, good in a room. Here's the skills that you need to have. Social skills, extroverted, receiving feedback gracefully, good at giving excellent notes and feedback, assessing quickly what the problems are and other ideas, and being able to offer solutions and not be a person who just shoots stuff down, but actually has fixes in mind for those things. Being able to riff off of other people and collaborate well. Remember, this is an extremely social job. Being nice, presentable, kind, and respectful will give you a big leg up. Don't be a douche. You need a thick skin. So, what's spec mean? I want to be pretty quick in this because we have so much else to do. I think we get the basics of this, but I'll go over it quickly. Spec means different things in different contexts. I know it's confusing. It basically stands for speculative. And in features, a spec is a script that you've written on your own. You have not been commissioned to write it, and it's not based on something else. Except for perhaps a public domain character or story or something like that. I don't know. The neat thing is you can pick, like, if you're like, I can't come up with characters or I can't come up with situations, well, you have thousands of public domain characters to choose from. Why not do one about Odysseus or Sherlock Holmes or, Harriet Tubman? Like, these are all public domain kind of characters, so you have access to all of those things. And if you're writing a script that has elements of those, that's still a spec. And you're commissioned by no one. It's written for the purpose of either improving your skills or getting you work in some way or getting reads and meetings and, management, and perhaps at some point attaching to certain parties that might be able to get that spec made. In TV, a spec episode refers to that kind of fan fiction episode of an existing show. So while a spec movie is entirely original, a spec episode of TV is not original and is in fact based on things that you don't have the rights to. So a show that is on the air, you can just write an episode of it for your portfolio, like, fan fiction, like I said. These are rarely needed nowadays and mostly only useful for practice and entering fellowships. A spec pilot is usually just called a pilot. And if we say pilot, we mean original pilot. It's the first episode of a theoretical series that doesn't exist and probably will never exist. And you're going to use that as a writing sample to get reads and meetings and enter contests and stuff. Okay, let's look at the basics here of the process. So, all Script Camp courses are going to use this sort of basic progression. Oh, maybe playwriting actually might not, but all of my courses, I should say. Morgan's a playwright, so she's going to do a very kind of like search your feelings kind of thing. I'm just messing with her, but like my method is very kind of brass tacks, go down the checklist, Logline, Sketchbook, story beats, scene cards, go to pages. So that is how I approach every project, books, plays, movies, everything. And we want to really emphasize each of these 5 steps as being really important. There's none of these that I will sort of ever skip. I think that you will, over time, like I mentioned before, form and adopt your own process, which will be maybe some of these things you really like, some of them you'll say that doesn't really work for me, and you'll find some better way of doing it yourself. But the point is to start to assemble a toolbox of things that you can use to make the best work possible. Let's go over what each of these things are. Logline, that's the one sentence that summarizes what your series is about, and you're going to have another logline for what the pilot is about. Number 2, sketchbook. That's going to be exactly what it sounds like, a bunch of unsorted ideas that are going to be everything from your inspirations for this project, images or links to videos or research material, ideas for characters and scenes and lines and all these things. It doesn't have to be in order. It doesn't have to be neat. It just goes all in the same place. Storybeat Summary is going to be that organization of events in the story with the kind of structural role of those events called out. So you know exactly where those things are going to, well, not exactly, you know roughly where those things are going to be. So you're going to know where your act breaks are. You're going to know what your midpoint is. You're going to know what the ending is. So you want to have the story kind of basically figured out there. Scene cards are expanding that Storybeat Summary so that it's getting much more detailed and you know what happens in every single scene. And when we say go to pages, that is a term also used in the industry. So remember that and use that. Go to pages means you actually start writing the properly formatted pages of the story. Notice how this is step 5. So in screenwriting, it's not really like discovery writing a novel where some writers will just open up a blank document and just go. It's essential that you be able to outline and organize your idea and make your plan of attack really, really, really thoroughly before you go into it. Okay, oops. I think I muted myself for a second there. Hopefully we can still hear me. Let's look at our next slide here. Logline. This is mostly what we'll be talking about the rest of today. And like I mentioned before, you should be scribbling your little notes right now and figuring out the basics of what your logline is. Even if you don't know the best way to format it, just give us whatever you've got. We had a question here. I have to leave early. Will the recording be online? Yeah, we're actually online right now. We're on Twitch and YouTube and all these things. So you can watch these back on YouTube afterwards if you want. Also, this will be in our video library for members in higher quality. Okay, so logline. Simplest and most common expression of a premise. So a premise is the idea for a show or movie. The logline is how you express that premise. So your entire story distilled down to a sentence or two. We want to know what's the inciting incident, who's the protagonist, and what do they want, and their kind of Act 2 goal and obstacle that they're working towards. We wanted to have a sense of what will happen if they fail, meaning the stakes or ticking clock. So that's kind of the essentials that you want to get down to just one sentence. You don't have to always use this format that I'm about to show you, but if you aren't using this format, then these are questions that you should be aware might be in your reader's mind. What are the stakes? What is the scope or what I call the walls of the story or the ticking clock of the story? These are things that your reader is going to be wondering if you don't somehow answer these or imply an answer to these questions. So this is more like this is the pilot logline and the feature logline here. Series logline we'll talk about pretty soon, and that's going to be a little more broad and it can be a little less concrete and sort of imply the general idea of the kinds of situations that will be in the show. But the pilot logline itself needs to have these things here so we know what is kicking off the story. That's the inciting incident, the first domino to tip into the other ones, what we call also the catalyst. So when or after the inciting incident, an adjective protagonist, you're choosing your adjective to imply some relevant and important trait of your main character that is going to be relevant, that is going to come up in this story, be a factor in the story, maybe be something they're struggling with in the story or struggling to overcome, or maybe it's an adjective that describes their unique tactic or background or just what makes this person unique and special and worth watching, or perhaps it is going to emphasize their personal connection to what's going on. For instance, if you're I don't know, an alcoholic detective might be investigating a serial killer who murders people by injecting them with alcohol. You see what I mean here? We want to emphasize that your character's connection to what's going on sometimes. You must conflict being the basis of drama, as many of us know. This is the thing that they're trying to do that has some kind of appreciable and concrete obstacle in the way, usually an antagonist or series of antagonists, but it doesn't always necessarily have to be. Before or in order to, stakes, meaning what will happen, why are they trying to do this, what is the time frame on this, what is going to go wrong, or what bad thing is going to happen if they don't accomplish this. Basically, why do we care? What are the ramifications of this? So, and when I say walls, I mean, like, does this all take place in one summer? Does this all take place in one night? I don't think many TV shows all take place in one night. Actually, wait, wasn't there one show that kind of did that? 24 does that. So yeah, if you have some kind of like walls around the story, then this is a good place for us to know that. So I'm going to leave that up for a second and see if anyone has questions about just this basic pilot logline format that I would recommend writing down on your sheet if you're still in the phase of like making little notes and trying to figure out what your ideas actually are. Any questions about this basic format or what any of these things mean before we go on? We will get more into these as we go, but questions about this for now?
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Oh, no, you were being quiet for a while. I was confused.
Oh, I was just asking if anyone has any questions. No big deal.
Oh, okay, never mind. I just missed something.
Okay, that's all good. Let's move on to the next slide. So, TV versus features. So, we want to, with a feature logline, emphasize the protagonist's goal first and foremost, and like what we call their journey. But TV is more about what we call the engine, which is going to be the type of situation that is going to or the type of the factors that are going to create episodic, repeatable conflicts moving forward. So TV does have these two loglines, the series logline, which is going to be more focused on conveying the character, situation, or story world that will promise many different episodes. You don't have to be as clear about where it's going in the series logline. You kind of should give us the general broad trajectory of it. But sometimes shows have it's not like they're really going, like, where is The Simpsons going? It's not really going anywhere. So you want to give us a sense of what will those week-to-week episodic situations be like. That's what we call our story engine. So pilot logline is similar to a feature logline and is going to include this inciting incident, this protagonist, what do they want, what's in their way, and we want to make sure this conveys the right sort of tone and genre. So a film is about embracing a core concept and delivering on it through the course of its 2-hour runtime, but a TV series is expected to build on this core concept through each season. The concept does sort of evolve, and that's why the series logline is so much emphasizing compelling characters and the intriguing worlds they exist within. This is not written, I put this in quotes because this is from a writing site, this is not by me, but this is true and very important to note. The interesting character and interesting worlds, preferably both, are what you should be emphasizing in your series logline. So you should be making little sketches and notes for both of those. Ideally, you want to have both today. It's okay if you only have one or the other. Sketchbook, this is what you're going to be working on this week. A place to collect your notes, sketches, and ideas. There's no wrong way to do this or wrong thing to put in this. This is going to include maybe images or links to videos or research, notes about setting or location or themes, brainstorming ideas for premise scenes or the ending or individual lines or characters. Any of that stuff goes in the sketchbook. So that's just like a blank Google Doc is all I use for this. And you can make that now. So go to Google Drive or word processor if you really want to, but it's going to be easiest. Like if you're sharing documents with the class or with other students, you should be using PDF or Google Drive link and nothing else. We can't be opening like Word documents for the most part. So call it the name of your show, Sketchbook, and through the rest of the class, this is a good place to write out a few different versions of the logline or to start figuring that out. And you're going to be adding just unsorted ideas to the sketch document with no filter, no wrong answers, like lines of dialogue, scenes, characters, locations, and just put it all on the page here. So your sketchbook should kind of cover some of these things and put these at the top of your sketchbook, even if you don't have the answers to these right now. Write this at the top. You want title, format, which is going to be 30 or 60 minutes, premise or status quo. We'll get more into that in just a second, but that means, is this going to be a story that is building over time that we have to watch every episode to understand? Premise, show, like, I don't know, Lost, or, you know, I was going to say The West Wing, but I think The West Wing actually has a mix of both. So, like, yeah, something like Lost or Breaking Bad, those are premise shows. Status Quo shows will be every week we sort of reset. There might be some broader arcs, or, you know, some shows hybridize these two to some extent, but things like, you know, Family Guy is a status quo show. You don't have to watch the previous episodes to have known what's coming next. Same deal with, you know, everything from Teen Titans to Justice League to like a lot of cartoons are going to be status quo, and a lot of sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother are going to be status quo, and there's going to be some other sorts of status quo shows too, like procedurals, things like Law and Order, CSI. If you're doing one of these, then that usually is going to be a case of the week or monster of the week, like Supernatural. So you don't have to necessarily have seen the previous episodes. I know all the Supernatural fans are like, yes, you do, but it's a monster of the week show. Come on, guys. My first girlfriend was really into Supernatural, so I got to hear all about it. So genre, that is going to be I think we know what genre means. Genre is going to not be more than two things mixed together, though. So if you're like, I have a supernatural thriller, western, comedy, romance, then we're like, that's like 9 flavors, and I can't even tell what you're offering anymore. So don't do more than 2 genres. Just give us 2. If there's more nuance than that, then be reductive. Question in the chat: would a status quo be an anthology? So anthology is its own format. It's not quite status quo because anthology, in fact, doesn't have the same characters in any individual episode. So in fact, there is no status quo, and it's like its own thing that we aren't really going to work on because that's like basically just movies, just short films, basically. And in TV, I actually wrote on an anthology show. I wrote an episode of Creepshow several years ago, and they don't even have writers' rooms usually. I think some of them do, but at least that one didn't. And everyone works separately. Okay, so series logline. This can be broader in scope and requires less urgency, and is just sort of the general direction or a description of the sort of episodic situations we're going to see in the show. So give us a sentence describing maybe the world, the main character, and preferably both, depending on the hook. And then we have the pilot logline, which is going to read like the movie logline, and you can use that template that we showed you before. And you want to remember the main character's urgency and the sort of singular journey in just the arc of that one episode, and focus on giving us, remember, the beginning, middle, and end of a self-contained story that has several strategically loose hanging threads at the end that would suggest you have additional tarmac to kind of run on for the rest of the show. So take a mental snapshot of this, or maybe press print screen on your device or whatever, and start filling these things out at the top of your sketchbook right now. I will give you 5 seconds to do that, and then the class will be over. No, just kidding. So yeah, I'm gonna move on in a second, but yeah, start working on that, and we're past the hour mark on our class now. So in about 20 minutes, we're gonna start sharing these log lines for us to look at and give you feedback on. So prepare to start sharing. Be ready to have something to copy and paste into the chat in about 20 minutes. All right, time slot and format. There's a lot of variation and a lot of room for different types of formats nowadays. I understand there's web shows and Adult Swim shows and everything like that that can be anywhere from 15 minutes to 70 plus minutes in some formats, but for the most part, TV pilots are going to live at 30 minutes or at 60 minutes, so please choose one of these. 30 minutes, the expectations are that this is usually going to be comedic and or highly episodic. There's exceptions. We have half-hour horror, dramedy, dark comedy, thriller, drama, everything nowadays. So this is just what the norms are. You can push, if you want to push or break the norm somewhere and say, I want to do a half-hour epic fantasy show, then sure, why not? But, I mean, you'll have your work cut out for you, but okay, try it. I mean, now's the time to try weird and wacky things. Remember, you're not going to get more episodes. Your pilot will probably be bad, and it's not going to go anywhere. Those are like the, I know that's like, sounds awful to say, but it's just true. And like, you just should lean into and embrace that and say, because of that, because it's not going to go anywhere, because I'm not going to get a show, because this is just practice, I can do anything. I can do whatever I want. So pick a crazy idea that you're like, oh, I would love to see that someday, but they never make that. Here's an idea that I would want to do. I don't even know if I'm ever going to write this. I just think it's a fantastic idea. I want to do, and this is for a movie, but maybe this could be a show too. Like, it's a movie that's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets Doom. And the idea is that there's like a squad of mercenaries or like special forces soldiers led by, let's say, The Rock. And they're going after an evil mad scientist, and they break into his house, and he uses a shrink ray on them. And now they're tiny, and they have to find a way to arrest this giant guy, and they're like hiding out in his walls. And he's like got a bunch of pet bugs he sets out after them, and they have to like, they're getting like ripped apart by giant mosquitoes and like caught in spider webs and a giant woodpecker. And they have to like fight for their lives in this really, really serious kind of like Starship Troopers type setting. But it's like ridiculous and silly because they're tiny. So that's an idea that I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna write that. It's so cool and it's great. Would they ever make that? No, that'd be like $100 million for a pretty ridiculous premise. But I always would want to see that. So that would be an idea I would pick for, like, the kind of idea I would pick for a boot camp. Pick something that you're like, I would love to do that someday, even though they'd never make it. I think somebody asked a question. Go ahead.
Why not you make it, if it's so expensive, I think you should just take an alternative and make it in animation. That could work.
It could. I mean, the chances of getting an animated show made are in fact less than getting a live action show made, because those are massively expensive to make and they take actually longer, and they're more expensive than live action in some cases. But I mean, in terms of the format, it would work. I think it would be cool. It's just animation might be easier to do certain types of things, but that doesn't mean it's like cheaper as a show to make overall. And like hiring an animation staff is just as or more expensive than like hiring a bunch of actors and doing special effects and stuff. But in theory, that could be true. You're right. Okay, so looks like we have somebody's posting some ideas already, which is great. In about 10 minutes, we will get into these more. So let's go over some of the basics again. Remember, 30 minutes or 60 minutes, that's your choices. And somebody just mentioned animation. You can say that either one of these, like, there's not a difference between how you write animated or live action. It looks the same on the page. There's no difference. So you can choose to write something animated if you want. I mean, remember, this is just imaginary animation, so it's not going to make a huge difference either way. It's up to you. Here's the genres. I know there's subgenres and there's variations in between these things, but the basic categories are comedy, drama, crime, sci-fi, fantasy, action-adventure, and many people will lump sci-fi fantasy together, by the way. Action-adventure, mystery thriller, and horror, which is a pretty new TV genre. I don't think people even thought of horror as a TV genre before, let's say, Walking Dead.
Supernatural.
Which one?
Supernatural.
Supernatural, yeah, Supernatural more of, it has horror elements, definitely. It's got a lot of fantasy, and it's mystery thriller. It's kind of like everything mashed into one. I wouldn't say it's only horror, but yeah, some episodes definitely are.
I guess so.
Yeah.
This was better.
Okay, so these are your options. You can find like a subgenre within this, and like I said, don't pick more than 2 things, or else it's going to start to, if you have too many flavors, it starts to just feel like no flavor at all. Procedural is going to be this stuff that's like, these are status quo live action shows that are usually an hour long. They're very pulpy, usually kind of police, medical, legal, or based on some other institution like that. Sometimes you have like a weird hybrid where it's like, we have a supernatural procedural, like something like Angel. Animated shows are usually 30 minutes in either comedy or action adventure, but up to you. All of these shows here can be described in just 1 or 2 genres, and yours should also be able to. If there's so many genres in there that we can't tell what it is anymore, your audience will just be confused. Premise versus status quo. Let's go over this. Premise is like a very long movie. You need to watch the episodes in order to follow the story. The characters change more over the course of multiple seasons. Status quo. Everything goes back to the beginning at the end of every episode. This continuity either is lighter, or it is reset every time, or there is very gradual change over the course of, there are still arcs and sitcoms and things like that, but more or less it's kind of, you can pick it up anywhere. So premise pilots, here's some examples. They're like the first part of a feature film. We are introduced to the characters quickly. We learn about the world that they are in, or the world they're about to enter. Remember, like, we can have your main character already, we can just open on a show with your main character already in this world, or, already in the job or in the office, or it could be like their first day on the job or their first day in the office, and they're being introduced to everything in the world of the show. So, like, you can do either way. But like the emphasis here is on the singular journey with a concrete beginning, middle, and end, and some threads strategically left hanging. Almost always you're going to have a main central character in these shows. Breaking Bad, who's our main character? It's Walter White. Ozark, who's our main character? It's Marty Byrde. Lost. Whoa, there's a ton of characters in that. Who's the main character? That's a question for the class. Who's seen Lost?
Me.
Yes, Nacho's a big Lost fan. And did you even like the ending, Nacho?
No, but I felt like
a true Lost fan.
It could have tied everything up. I think it was theoretically possible to have a fantastic ending, just like 1 or 2 episodes changing.
Yeah, I think so too. But who's the?
Yeah.
You're right. Who's the main character in Lost?
Jack.
It's Jack. So
How long
Go
ago did that show come out?
I think it came out in 2004 and ran till 2010.
Y'all are old.
We're old.
I-
I'm 29, sir. Go ahead.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I think like the writers of Game of Thrones got a lot. I know that they got a lot of flack for the ending of Game of Thrones, the writers, but they said that writing like a finale, a satisfying finale, is hard. Is that true?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people praise the finale of Breaking Bad and have some issues with the finale of Dexter.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, I know you can't please everyone, but how do you feel like what feels like the appropriate way to like end a TV show series?
Well, it's super hard. You're right. It's one of the more difficult things to do because everyone has different expectations and different favorite characters, and by the time you've done years of a show, people are going to have a certain expectation of how they want things to go, and they're going to start building that expectation. And if you start to like give them something that they weren't set up for properly, or if you miscalibrate things even a little bit, you'll throw people off and they'll be dissatisfied. So the goal from making a really solid ending is something that is unexpected but also inevitable. And I know those sound like contradictory, because how can something be unexpected but also inevitable? But that's like the core, that's the key of it. It needs to be it needs to feel like it's going in a logical way, that like the blocks or the dominoes are tumbling in the way that I generally thought they would, but they end up landing in a configuration that I couldn't have guessed it would be exactly like that. So, like, I know it sounds like I'm just giving you 2 contradictory things to do, but the nice thing is, as writers, we, for the most part, don't have to be ending shows. We are only writing pilots. You can worry about what makes the good ending of a pilot, and that's more important to kind of focus on and worry about. What makes the good ending of a show is a high-level problem for people who make millions of dollars a year, I should say, for the most part. So, yeah, unexpected yet inevitable is the key to endings. Okay, so premise pilots showcase the beginning of what the series will be, gives us a peek into the rest of the many vibrant stories that the world will contain. Premise pilots are going to be utilized for more kind of cinematic shows that contain either protagonist arcs that are going to be explored through the whole show, or like some kind of bigger mystery that's going to take many individual steps to resolve. Something like Servant, where our first episode is kind of like, what on earth is going on here? And then every successive episode is like, oh my gosh, what on earth is going on here even more? Like, I understand even less what's going on. So it's such a complicated mystery that we're going to need to solve it. It's not I shouldn't say it's a complicated mystery. It is just a very difficult mystery to solve that requires many steps along the way. Premise pilots, remember, ask this question: if the pilot never aired, will the audience know what's going on? Some issues with these, I won't go over all of these just because we need to move into the feedback section eventually, but you can review this here. These questions you're going to are going to be like, well, what's going to happen in the next episodes? And if you're getting that question, that might just be because you haven't left enough threads sort of strategically hanging at the end, and you haven't implied that there's more kind of road to go down. You haven't like just given hints of where it's going. Status Quo. These thrust you into the lives and situations of these characters, and these are complete and self-contained stories. So this is beginning, middle, and end. This is like a movie, basically. So things need to kind of settle into such a place that we understand that they will be there when we pick things up next time. The audience, like, if they tune into the middle of the show, they should not have a problem following the core characters, which is not to say that there isn't development or change in those shows, but the pilot is primarily in service of setting up this formula or template for the rest of the show. So either we start with characters all in one place and we end up with them back in the same place, or it could be that a little bit changes but they're basically in the same place, or it could be that your main character starts in one place and ends in this kind of like if it's like a show like Community about a person showing up at a new place, or like the IT Crowd is another one where I think they have a new boss, and she like by the end of the episode we have settled into that situation that we're going to be able to pick up from in theoretically any other episode in the rest of the run. So, we should pretty much immediately understand the tone, atmosphere, and scope of that potential series. We need to introduce the dynamic of these characters, the relationships, world they live in, and the general conflicts that are going to be ongoing in the show. This just needs to operate as like a little movie with that promise that there are dozens more sort of mini movies to be found in this same setup. And then there's like shows that have some combination of premise or status quo, which like I wouldn't worry too much about this. I don't really have that much advice here. Generally, try to lean more in one direction than the other. Like Venture Brothers, for instance, in the early seasons is sort of more thing of the week, and then in the later seasons becomes more premise, like you have to watch every episode to know what's going on. Wilfred is sort of it's sort of the same, actually, where it starts out more status quo, every episode is kind of self-contained, then we enter almost like a different genre of mystery storytelling as the show evolves. So there's weird exceptions. I would say probably don't try to be a weird exception. What are we trying to do in a TV logline? You're trying to imply a show that is visual and dynamic and about people doing things. You need to imply that the action is going to be tracked through stuff we can see. You want to avoid intangible goals and nebulous finish lines. In the pilot logline I'm talking about. Remember, the series logline is more like interesting character and interesting world. And the pilot logline is more like, when this happens, an adjective character has to do this conflict or else this bad thing will happen. So you want to showcase this unique and fascinating hook. Maybe some different POV that we're normally used to seeing shows like this from, some sense of irony, some mashup of familiar elements, maybe a different setting that we've never seen before with that kind of genre. Like, how can you find some new place to put that sort of genre in that would reinvigorate it or mix things up, or some different main character that would be some like point of view we've never seen before. You want to have an element of the familiar mixed with something kind of fresh and unique when you can. That's going to be the best way to get people to say, oh, snap, I see that right away. Of course, I want to read that because I can immediately picture it. You want to make sure the story seems like it has an audience, and it's not something that would just appeal to you or is so based on like stuff that only you know, or is so niche to one field that like the audience just doesn't quite understand. And give us a main character or a world, probably both, that are rich with story potential. Make sure you are clearly delineating between if your show is premise or status quo. Okay, here's some examples of series loglines. So remember, you need one of these, and you need a pilot logline. So let's look at some of these series loglines. This top one is my favorite one for a premise show. A fast-talking financial advisor drags his family from Chicago to the Missouri Ozarks, where he must launder $500 million in 5 years to appease a drug boss. Great. We don't necessarily need an inciting incident here, because this is, again, the series logline, and it's more like this is the repeatable situation, and it gives us a goalpost, but a distant one that is sort of saying $500 million in 5 years. Wow, that sure sounds like a 5-season show to me. So we have the adjective in the main character, which is fast-talking financial advisor, tells you, oh, that's going to be this guy's unique way of solving problems and staying out of trouble. We drags his family, implies a tension and a conflict between the different members of his family who do not want to be going on this trip or on this, retreat for their lives, basically. From Chicago to the Missouri Ozarks gives you a sense of the character is leaving this one world, and he has the skills and attitude of this one world that is being placed into a new one where he's forced to readjust. We can see the whole show based on this logline. It's fantastic. So if you're doing a premise show, study this logline well. This one is a really good status quo comedy logline. A black family man struggles to gain a sense of cultural identity while raising his kids in a predominantly white upper-middle-class neighborhood. Is there a strong goalpost there? Struggling to gain a sense of cultural identity? No, that is not a strong, tangible goalpost. That's all very internal and thematic, but that's okay. This is a series logline, and you're trying to give us the impression of the kinds of situations that will be showing up in the show and the sorts of themes and conflicts that they will be revolving around. Okay, so those are the top two examples. If you are doing a status quo show, look at Blackish. If you're doing a premise show, look at Ozark at the top here and say, I can use that as a template to figure out what exactly I'm doing with my series logline. Here's a couple other good ones. A high school chemistry teacher diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer turns to manufacturing and selling meth to secure his family's future. I would probably, with that one, want to mention he teams up with a former student of his. That it seems more relevant than manufacturing and selling meth. It's like you could have just said one or the other of those things and instead used those words on the central relationship of that show. So I would have done that with that one, but otherwise very good. And then our last one, I haven't seen Schitt's Creek, so I'm not quite sure if I think it's status quo. When a wealthy video store magnate Johnny Rose and his family suddenly find themselves broke. They are forced to abandon their pampered lives to regroup in Schitt's Creek. Okay, this one, a little bit vague. I don't know what Schitt's Creek is. Is that like a lodge out in the woods or something like that? So maybe be a little more specific with what the thing is. And also, we don't need to list your characters' names unless they are a public domain character, like, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes, or if it's a historical figure like Harriet Tubman, then in which case you would want to say their name so we know what we're watching. Anyway, I'll probably want to cut that last example, but these top three are actually quite good and worth looking at. Any questions about series loglines? Goddess says premise logline, but series seemed status quo. Sorry, what's the question here, Goddess? Maybe she can't talk right now. That's okay. Feel free to clarify the question if you want. Oh, go ahead. Is someone there?
Yes. Hello, you hear me?
Hi, I hear you fine. Go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yes. Are those log lines for first episodes only, or for the whole?
This is the series. The series log line's the whole thing.
Gotcha. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Right. So yeah, the series, it can be a little broader. It can be a little more kind of like wider in scope. We don't need as tangible of a goalpost for the character, like especially if it's a status quo show. You're giving us the type of conflict that we will be seeing, not like this person needs to do this thing by this deadline. We'll talk about pilot loglines now, though. So pilot loglines more like this. So when inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict or else are before stakes. So remember, motivation, stakes, and urgency. We want to make it seem like this character, has something happen that shakes up their normal life that they then must tackle the central conflict in a unique way that that allows your character to exhibit their skill set or whatever, their personality, whatever makes them unique as a person. And we want to know, what is their conflict? What do they actually have to do? What are we watching people do in the show? And stakes are, what happens if they don't do this? It should be evident to us, like the ramifications of this and how important this actually is. Like it shouldn't seem like if the character doesn't go on this journey, what happens? Kind of nothing. That should not be the answer. So we need both of these things. So I hope everyone has been working on these, because in 5 minutes at the half-hour mark, we're going to post series and pilot loglines for review and feedback to try to get them into ship shape for next week. So, any questions on series or pilot loglines before I talk about just ideas?
What's actually a premise logline?
So, I think you might be conflating a couple different terms here. So, the two types of loglines are series and pilot. Series is the broad look at the whole show. Pilot is what we're doing in the first episode. A premise show is referring to the type of show that you need to watch every episode to know what's going on. It's not like it resets the continuity. Shows like Lost or Breaking Bad are premise shows. So, does that make sense? I think you might have just been kind of mixing up some terms.
Question.
Sure, go ahead.
Are we going to be presenting our pilot or series loglines in 5 minutes?
Whatever you've got, preferably both.
All right.
Did that answer the question, Missy, for you? Okay, hope it did. Other questions? Okay, so we're going to move on. Get ready to post those loglines soon. Have you chosen the pilot idea? So you might have multiple different ones that you are choosing from. So what you want to do is I'm going to give you just 4 minutes to work on this. And you're going to, once it's ready, post the title, genre, format, and time slot. Remember, format being, is this 30-minute or 60-minute? Those are your basic choices. And sorry, that's what time slot is, 30-minute or 60-minute. Format is premise or status quo. And then we want to see whatever you've got, even if it's not complete, even if you're struggling to pick between multiple, we're going to be able to help you. So take the next 3 minutes and just work on this, and I can answer and take questions in the meantime. So feel free to drop questions in chat or unmute and ask, and in 3 minutes I will start reading them off.
I have a question, Connor.
Go right ahead.
with the genres, you gave us the list. I was just wondering, is supernatural coming of age, is that a genre or is that too broad?
Coming of age is usually going to be either comedy or drama, right? So is it coming, like Moonlight is a coming of age movie, right? But so is something like Back to the Future, sort of. So like there's a lot of tone within that. Usually you're going to want to pick either comedy or drama for coming of age, and for supernatural that's going to be like fantasy. So yeah, fantasy comedy or fantasy drama is probably what I would choose for that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I didn't get a chance to write down what what Status Quo was just after you had gone past the slides. So what actually does the Status Quo need?
So Status Quo is referring to, here it is, a show that they're complete and self-contained stories like The Simpsons or Family Guy or a sitcom like Friends or How I Met Your Mother, where like the show itself is a series of repeatable situations. We can watch them in any order, something like CSI. And the pilots for these, they're going to be completely sort of self-contained stories that are either your protagonist is already in the kind of like thing of the week sort of job, or like for instance, if it's the detective show, it might just be that your character it might just be a case of the week, right? Or it might be your character becomes a detective, and it's sort of them entering into that world that by the end of the first episode, we understand that, okay, things sort of settle into place, that when we're able to pick them up from wherever they fall and have that be the foundation for any other episode. So let's say guy becomes a detective, and the last shot of the episode is he sits behind his desk and he's like, all right, what's next? So that's how Status Quo pilots kind of work. Did you have did I answer that, or did you have a more specific question in there?
No, it makes sense.
Okay, great. So I'll give you guys about 30 seconds, and then we want to start posting those log lines if you've not already done so. Remember to include title, genre, format and time slot, and series logline. Or, series or pilot, whatever you've got. There's been a children's birthday party in the apartment next to mine that has been going since that I fell asleep at 2 a.m. and it was still blasting mariachi music really loudly, and it's still going. It's 12:30 the next day.
What kind of person has a children's party at 2 a.m.?
They go really late in LA.
Oh.
I don't know. I think they have a bunch of kids there.
Popping non-alcoholic bottles.
Probably.
Crazy.
All right, so let's see some log lines, and maybe my neighbors want to come over and give us some log lines too. Let me flip back to the other view and bring up the stream chat so we can all see. There we go. All right, so post what you got. Let's give some feedback and be prepared to read it out loud and talk about it and answer questions. Looks like Tom posted his up above. Thank you, Tom. Oh, these are just titles, I think. If you've got more than just these, the titles for, what is it, Agent Doe and Six Gun Gorilla. This sounds cool, but yeah, try to fill out, if you've got a little more to share, we can hopefully start to refine it. whenever you guys are ready, I will start to read these off. Thank you, Simone. If we can get one or two more up before I start reading, that would be great. If not, I'll just start with Simone, and you guys can post them while I'm talking to her.
I'm typing mine.
Thank you.
Sorry, this is off topic, but I just had to. Could you just show the slide again of what the pilot logline formula is? Because I didn't get a chance to write all of it down.
Sure. I can also. I'll just link you to
Please.
the slideshow, and then you can browse all the slides if you want.
Sweet, thanks.
Sure.
Link.
One sec. All right, there you go. And if you're watching on one of our streaming channels, then and you want to get this link, make sure to join our Discord, and you can have access to the whole slideshow. 54 slides, 55. Okay, so let's take a look at some of our first posts here. Again, remember, thank you, Jazzy, for this. I'm going to start with Simone, and you're going to read this out loud for us.
Ready?
Hi, Simone, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to get my... Okay.
No big deal. Go ahead and read this out and tell us what you got.
Okay. All right. Uh-oh, I jumped. Here we are. Okay. In 1965, a British millionaire philanthropist who is a mix of Jimmy Savile and Joan Crawford is placed on trial by two of his now adult 8 adopted sons for child sexual abuse after he cuts them off financially for disobeying one of his many cardinal rules.
All right, thank you for that. So this is called The Trial of Sir Ivan Sturges. It's a crime drama and is a limited series or premise show. Okay, and I'm going to read it back one more time. In 1965, a British millionaire... Is this the series or pilot, Logline?
Series.
It's the series, okay. So in 1965, a British millionaire philanthropist who is a mix of Jimmy Savile and Joan Crawford. I can't say I know who those people are, so that's making this a little tricky just right off the bat. Is placed on trial by two of his now adult 8 adopted sons. Is just like a complicated sentence. I think you're seeing how like having this clause in the middle of all of this that is clarifying. Like I think that there's a much more sort of streamlined way that we can be expressing this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why I'm kind of in here.
Sure. So it's placed on trial by two of his now adult 8 adopted sons for child sexual abuse after he cuts them off financially for disobeying one of his many cardinal rules. Okay, so maybe flip this around so that we have the inciting incident up first, so we're not waiting all this time to figure out what set this thing in motion. Do you see what I mean? If we start with when he cuts off his kids for this reason, and then you would probably pick, is there like one of these kids that is the one who's, are they suing him, or are they, you say it's being placed on trial?
Yeah, 2.
There's 2 of them. Okay. So, who would you say is the main character here? Is it one of the sons, or is it the millionaire?
One of the sons.
It's one of the sons. Okay. I would reframe this a little bit more so that you bring that son to the forefront. And maybe, I know you say there's 2 of them, but pretend the other one doesn't exist just for the purposes of this pilot logline, because we only have so many words to use. Like, I know it might be reductive, and you're like, the two of them are super important, but pretend like, just emphasize that one. And if this is going to be like a head-to-head father-son kind of like knockdown, drag-out, like Succession type legal fight. Have you watched Succession?
No, I have not.
Oh, check it out. It's sort of in a similar kind of vein of like, millionaire rich people, children versus their parents, like knockdown horrible legal battles and stuff like that. I would check it out. But yeah,
Okay.
try to bring out the main character a little bit more, because if you're saying that the protagonist is one of these sons, I don't really see them. We want to know who that person is, and I don't see them in the logline at the moment. So try to emphasize that. Maybe you reframe it a little bit so that the inciting incident comes first rather than at the end, and try to cut some words from this and maybe describe this character in a way that doesn't rely on us knowing who those 2 people are. I mean, maybe I'm just dumb and those are really famous celebrities are Jimmy Savile and Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford is a performer from TV. Is she a TV actress?
Oh, she was a big time movie actress, and
Movie
there was
actress, okay.
from the 30s on down into the 60s. And you know, she's like really famous from her daughter writing a book about her, a tell-all book about how she was abused as a child.
Oh, okay, so that's why you picked that one specifically, because of the background.
Savile is a well-known pedophile in the UK. He used to host dance shows and stuff like that over there.
Okay.
And then so yeah, he's got a long story with him too. So
gotcha. All right. So I would just say, like, I'm sure those people are very famous and well known, but do you think a 19-year-old intern will know who they are?
Oh, no, probably not.
Right, and that's who you have to get to read your pilot. So the people reading these things are very young and younger than me. I'm 29 and I don't know who those people are. So like I would just keep in mind if understanding the entire premise is contingent on knowing who certain people are or what certain events are, then just make sure it's something that a 19-year-old intern would be familiar with.
Gotcha.
Questions about this?
Well, the name of the person in, you know, the name of the whole series, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a bad thing if he's not the protagonist, because the actual protagonist, you know what I'm saying? Like, to name the show after, you know, after the person that's on trial, the trial is basically the background, the backbone of the show. Right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
So the protagonist is actually the antagonist as well, in a way. But you have to get down to that. But anyway, long story short, it's not him. So that's okay to name a show after the father, but there's a protagonist that comes in.
Yeah, of course, you can name the show after the villain. I don't think the hero of the movie The Blob is the Blob, right? It's like you can name it after the villain for sure. Like, or you can name it after the situation or like what's going on. It doesn't have to. The protagonist doesn't have to be in the title.
Gotcha. All right.
So this is so those little changes there will make a stronger series logline. And then for the pilot logline, find what's happening in that episode 1 and give us like the inciting incident. So when when he gets a phone call from this thing, like bring the scope down a little bit.
Okay, gotcha.
And just tell us what happens in that first like hour of TV. But nice work with this. No more questions on this?
No. Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Simone. Looks like we've got some more great posts at this point. Thank you, guys. And Willow says not knowing Joan Crawford is like not knowing Betty White. I know Betty White. Don't worry.
# Golden Girls.
Yes, exactly.
And what do I have to press to send mine? Where do I post mine? In the general chat?
So scroll down on the left side of the Discord window, and you're going to find a chat channel that's called TV Pilot Class. It's in the folder of just discussion, so you should see a list that says introduce yourself, tag yourself, screenwriting chat. So scroll down to the bottom of that, and you'll find a button to click on that says TV Pilot Class, and that'll bring you to our chat channel.
Right above the voice call, like right above it.
Yeah.
If you're mobile. I'm not sure if it's on computer too.
Yeah, it's a little different between tablet, mobile, and like on different, on desktop versus Mac and things like that, but that's generally where it is. Let us know if you can't find it.
Screenwriting on mobile is hard.
Yes, it is. Writer Duet makes a pretty good app, and in terms of writing on mobile, it's the best one I've found.
I use Google Docs because that's my thing. Oh.
Yeah, I use Google Docs for outlining and for all my other like pre-writing, and I also use it for novels. But for formatting, Writer Duet is going to be your best bet.
All right. I can't get used to the other apps. Sorry.
It's all good. Okay, so it looks like we have a chat from a viewer on YouTube. Oh, Barris Collins. He says, I've done a screenplay before, and I wonder, how do I make a character who betrays a character, giving a little hint for it to happen, because I struggled last time at trying. I think you're talking about sort of, how do you foreshadow something, or how do you, hint at a plot event that is going to happen, like a big betrayal. This is, I guess, a little off topic because we're mostly talking about loglines now, but I can just answer this pretty quickly. When it comes to foreshadowing, try to do two things at once. So, for instance, like, let's imagine that your character has like a big map on a table, and he's a general in the army, and his best friend is another general right there, and he's like, at midnight, we're going to attack here, and he stabs a big dagger into where they're going to attack. And you're actually sneakily setting up that dagger for later. So, like, that's just and then later he stabs his friend in the back with that same dagger, right? So in that way,
Helps.
it looked like what we were doing is one thing, but really you're doing that kind of stagecraft misdirection, like watch this hand while this hand is doing something else that magicians do, right? So that's how foreshadowing can be really effectively done, because like if we're looking at the other hand, we're not going to see you like, oh, put that dagger into place beforehand. So that's just like a really condensed explanation of how you can kind of hide foreshadowing in something else, so that when the viewer goes back, they're like, oh, of course, he wasn't setting up something with the map and the plan of attack, he was setting up the knife. I should have seen that. I'm so dumb. So try to combine moments and do two things at once so that we are watching this other hand while you're doing something else. That's good foreshadowing. Okay, we have some more pilot loglines posted. Let's pick another one for someone to read out and get feedback on. Jazzy, you want to read yours out for us? Was Jazzy the one earlier who said maybe she would not be able to speak because she's at work or something? Or are you able to speak, Jazzy? Go ahead.
I think it was them.
Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry.
You're good. Do you want to read what you've got for us?
Yes. Sorry, I was out of the app. I'm trying to pull up the.
It's all good. You'll have to scroll up just a little bit in the chat to find it.
Okay, cool. Working title is A One Night Stand is Forever. Genre, supernatural dramedy. Format, 30-minute. Premise, series logline. This was supposed to be... I know this is too long. I'll just read it.
Okay.
After a desperate man makes a deal with the devil to save his dying daughter from cancer, he finds that the price of his little girl's immortality and the murderers they have both become is too much to keep up. As he tries to find a way to get the two out of the contract, he finds a community of others just like him.
Okay, interesting. I like the setup here. I've got some questions. You say they become murderers. When did that happen? Was that was the deal he made? He has to become a murderer?
Right.
And his daughter also becomes a murderer? Why is that?
Well, over time, she's had to participate.
Okay. So when you say the murderers that they have both become, that sort of implies that this has like already happened, and the chronology of this is just like a little bit difficult to track. So the beginning of this is fantastic. Yeah. After a desperate man makes a deal with the devil to save his dying daughter from cancer. Perfect. I'm so intrigued and excited. I would love to continue this. He finds that the price of his little girl... We're getting abstract now. He finds that the price of his little girl's immortality and the murderers they have both become, which you didn't really explain how, is too much to keep up. I would cut like almost all that sentence and find a way to express what is he trying to do. Oh, he's trying to find a way to get them out of the contract. Perfect. Use that as the second half. So after Desperate Man does this, he struggles to find a way to get them out of the contract. What do you mean by he finds a community of others just like him?
He finds a support group for people who've sold their souls to the devil.
That's hilarious. Why don't you phrase it like that in the logline? That's so funny.
I guess I should do that then.
Yeah. I don't understand what a community of others like him means. A support group for people who have sold their souls to the devil is hilarious.
Yeah. So the idea is that it starts off with he's having to commit murders regularly for the devil to save his daughter's life. And in the pilot, she ends up killing someone. And so since this is the series logline, I thought I probably should say they're both murderers. And also his daughter is immortal now. And she's forever in a 11-year-old's body, and she's 16 at this point. And then in the pilot, he finds somebody finds him, invites him to this support group of people like him, and then he starts realizing that maybe he can find a way to get out of this contract.
Okay, this is great stuff, but I would rephrase it just kind of something like this. After a desperate man makes a deal with the devil to save his dying daughter from cancer, he partners with the, eccentric members of a supernatural support group to find a way out of the deal.
Okay. Yeah, that
something
sounds
like
much
that. You don't have to do exactly like that, but that's just like the level of concision and like straight to the point kind of stuff that you want to get. And also you want to suggest, is this going to be about us getting to meet the, different ensemble members of the support group and learning all their stories, and that's like kind of building out the cast of the show?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then yeah, something like this is exactly what you want to do.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. This sounds very funny.
Thanks.
And did you have a pilot logline too, or just that one for now?
No, I started off trying to write a pilot logline, and then I figured this would be probably better a series logline, so I need to work on that.
Okay, great. My last note is on the title. This title does not seem to be the title for this show.
Yeah.
One night stand. What? That sounds. A one night stand is like a hookup, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. That's not going to be the title. I'm sorry. I even wrote it down. But it's because the idea sprung from somebody telling me a story about their one night stand, and this idea sprung from that, which has nothing to do with this, other than the fact I'm going to start the pilot off with a one night stand.
Oh, what? Like him conceiving his daughter or something?
No.
Okay.
So it's going to start off with him luring a man to his apartment to murder him.
To murder. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. But the title for this would probably be like the name of the support group or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, think of what is the name of the group. Brimstoners Anonymous or some shit like that. I don't know. But you get the idea. Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks.
All right, let's do some more. We have 10 minutes and like 2, 3. Oh, we might go a little over time because we just got a couple more log lines posted, and that's fine. So let's take a look at what else we've got. Tom, Agent Doe, go ahead and read this out for us.
All right, let me scroll up. Title is Agent Doe. The format is its premise, 30 minutes. Series logline. I have a series and pilot. Series logline. In the year 2035, the United States government is robbed of a time machine by a Texan Confederate named Carter. They send a retired agent and his crew to stop Carter from changing history in the South's favor.
Okay, and can you read the pilot for us, too?
Yes. The pilot logline is Confederate Carter Tutham travels back to April 6, 1862 to assassinate Civil War General Ulysses S. Grant.
All right, so interesting stuff here, but I just have to make sure I understand. In the year 2035, the United States government is robbed of a time machine by a Texan Confederate. Is this an alternate history where the South never fell or something? What exactly is the setup here?
Nope, it's just a really racist guy.
Why do you describe him as a Confederate? What does that mean in the year 2035?
Repeat that, please.
What do you mean by that? You're saying he's a Confederate. That makes me think that
he's in.
Go ahead.
Basically, example, a more extreme version of those people posting their photos of them carrying Confederate flags.
Oh, so like just a
right, racist or something like
racist? That. I mean, saying he's a Confederate makes it sound like he's part of the Confederate States of America, which was a nation that existed briefly to wage war on the United States of America, right? So it sort of makes it seem like you're setting up, this takes place in a world where the Civil War is maybe still ongoing in the future or something like that, which I don't think is exactly what you're saying, right?
Is not what I was saying.
Okay, so...
I'll straight racist. I'll replace Confederate with racist.
Okay, sure. They send a retired agent and his crew to stop Carter from... So we want to try to not use names when we can, unless it's going to be like... Ulysses S. Grant, you can use that as a name because that's an actual historical person. But we shouldn't have to remember... Like, no one's going to remember character names normally. So we shouldn't have to rely on them. They send a retired agent and his crew to stop him from changing history in the South's favor. Oh, okay, I get it. Oh, okay, great. So a bad guy has gone back in time to try to essentially make the South win the Civil War, and they've sent heroes they've sent like secret agents to go stop him. It's like Timeline or like Timeless, see what you mentioned before, yeah.
That's like the biggest inspiration I got for this.
Gotcha. That's okay. Originality is like almost completely irrelevant at this stage. So like if you want to do something that's similar to a premise that already exists, just go ahead and do it. It's all good. So this is cool. I will say you probably don't want to suggest that this guy is your main character. You want to suggest that who's the protagonist? You say a retired agent. Why we should be framing the pilot logline more about that guy more than if the pilot logline is racist Carter Tudum, then it's like, oh, that's the hero of this. No, you should be saying like frame it around what your hero is doing rather than what the villain is doing.
All right.
So yeah, maybe give us like a few words to describe the hero. You say he's retired, but is there anything else we can get there?
All right.
Some kind of personal connection. Go ahead.
Maybe in a few years, whenever I actually try to get stuff done, I just send in Timeless meets Men in Black.
Sure.
That's enough.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Pretty much it.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So, does that give you some good
yes.
adjustments to make here?
Don't start with racist Carter Tudum.
Yeah. Give us we want to focus on the main character for the most part. Like it's okay that you start with we can start with the villain in the series logline where we're like, this bad guy goes back and just saying, is he a scientist? Is he like, rather than describing him as a racist, you might want to use the word like, what are his actual skill set or what does he come from? Is he like a molecular physicist? Is he a secret agent? Is he a soldier? Is he like, find out maybe what his skill set or the threat that he poses is more than just explaining his motivations, because by saying that he's going to go back in time and try to make the South win the war, I think we're going to understand that that's his motivation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions for a better pilot logline?
Just frame it on the main character instead. Use our template that we showed before. So when inciting incident occurs, so when he gets, when he's hired by the president to go back in time, this main character, so an adjective main character that describes him in terms of some trait he's struggling with or something that, if you're like, I don't know, a civil rights activist, secret agent or something, you see what I mean? That would be something personal. That would make it feel like, that might be silly, but that's the kind of connection you're looking for, right? He must go back in time to stop a scientist from, or whatever, a terrorist, a time terrorist, you could maybe even say, from killing Ulysses S. Grant.
I'm gonna patent that, thanks.
Time terrorist. Yeah, it's all yours. Go ahead. All right, thank you for this, Tom.
No problem.
Let's go down to Orlando.
Hi.
Hi, Orlando. Can you read these out for us?
Yeah, I have two, but I don't know what to choose. First one is Black Book, 3 minutes, and a young demon woman escapes from prison and enters to the human world. Without knowing, meets her mother before she becomes a succubus. She never gets to meet her, and she thinks her mother abandoned her. So I'm struggling with that.
Okay, so I can give you some pointers on that, but why don't you just read the second one and we can help you kind of pick which one to develop.
Okay, Skin, 3 minutes, and middle-aged man. Superhero is in the final stage of his life because his body can stand the superpowers.
Okay, so a middle-aged superhero is dying because of his powers are like killing him somehow. I would say I'm not quite seeing what the conflict actually is, though. What is he actually doing in the show?
Well, he is actually he looks like middle-aged man, but he's actually 35, and he got his powers from an alien.
Okay, but what's he doing in the show?
He lost his family. He's trying to recover his son.
Recover his son. Okay, that might be something we'd want to bring up in the log line if that's going to be super important. So I guess between these two, I would say Black Book seems like it has more kind of development in place. And if I had to say go with that one, I would say go with Black Book.
Okay.
I'm a little confused on, like, we shouldn't have to have a parenthetical clause at the end that sort of explains backstory. So you say she never got to meet her, she thinks her mother abandoned her. You can just explain all that by saying her long-lost mother, right? So a young demonic woman escapes from prison and meets her long-lost mother. I don't quite know what you mean by before she becomes a succubus, but like maybe that should just give you a way to take a bunch of words out of this and make this simpler and clearer.
Okay.
Any questions on these?
Thank you.
Sure, no questions?
I think I got it. No, I think well, just one.
Sure.
So, if I get this like simpler, without the succubus and all that, it's okay with I don't know, work that on the story, even if it's not in the logline?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Can you ask again?
Yeah. I mean, it's okay without all of the details, or just go simpler.
Yeah, if it's just the series logline, then it can be simpler and a little bit broader. You don't have to be as specific. For the pilot logline, that's going to be like, when she escapes from prison, this woman has to do this thing, or else by this time or whatever. The series logline is just a bigger picture of like the overall conflict of the show.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Orlando. Barris Collins says, I've done a screenplay and felt it needed a rewrite. My question is that, how do I write a good opening scene that doesn't give too much away? That's a great question. I would say you should, since we're doing loglines right now, and this is more of like a writing craft question, then we have classes on this at Script Camp. So I would say go to scriptcamp.net and /classes, and you can find, or /events/month, and you can find like a whole list of all of our classes. We have one on beginnings of movies, which is going to be on a Wednesday or Thursday coming up. We have a feature boot camp that goes through every stage of writing a movie that would be able to answer all the questions that you had about this. So I would say, just in terms of what we're doing right now, it might be a little off topic, but we'd be glad to answer this if you come to a Script Camp class that's focused. Like, we spend hours and hours on this topic in different classes, so we'd definitely be able to help you with this. Okay, so we've got time for a couple more. We're almost at the end of our normal runtime, but so like feel free to head out if you're in this. Like, no one's gonna be mad at you for leaving or whatever. In 1 minute, I just want to, before I'm gonna like stay overtime to go over these last log lines. So let me just skip to the end of our slideshow and review the homework for next week. Gosh, we had a couple slides left, didn't we? So here we go. For next week, due March 20th, that's 1 week from today. Refine your series logline and pilot logline as much as you can. Start on the sketchbook, which, remember, is just this blank document with an unsorted list of ideas for all the stuff that you might want to include, all the inspirations and ideas that you have. And you want to read at least one professional TV pilot, ideally in this sort of like general genre world that you're doing as well, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, that's what you want to do by next week. We're at the end of our runtime, so feel free to leave if you'd like, but I'm going to stay and go over these last log lines. So if you want me to do that, you have to be here so you can answer questions about it. Here's a list of everything coming up at Script Camp. Table reads at 4 o'clock today. Bring up to 5 pages of a script, and you can have other readers read it and get feedback on it. Writer's Lab is Saturdays, 4 to 6. So a week from now, or 6 days from now, at 4 o'clock, you can come in with just questions you have or scenes you're working on or outlines you want me to look at, and we can just have office hours, basically. We have free workshops Wednesday and Thursday at 4 p.m., in which we're going to have a wide variety of class topics. VIP member classes Wednesday, Thursday at 5. TV Pilot Bootcamp is the 6-week course that starts officially next week, but it's this Sundays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. These are all in Pacific time. If you're ever wondering, all of our times are always in Pacific. Rewrite Bootcamp, 4 weeks, Saturdays, 12 to 2. That one just started, so it's not too late to join. But you're going to want to join pretty soon because we are in groups, and you're going to, if you want feedback, you got to kind of get in there now. Playwriting Camp, new one, 6-week course starts Saturdays, 2 to 4, starts next week. And feature 8-week courses Fridays, 4 to 6 p.m. So, plenty of stuff to do at Script Camp. So come on by for one of those. Let's go back to our last couple of these pilot log lines. And I want to go over these with the students. Let's see what we've got. So I'm going to scroll down. And I'm going to, maybe with... I'll do Nachos a little later because he's in every class and just we want to make sure we get to the student ones. Let me scroll down a little bit. So we just did our Londa, and now let's do Goddess list with cultish drama and fantasy.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wrote this today, so
it's all good.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, cultish. A Generation X college girl in 1990s Austin enters the world of goddess worship, radical feminism, and adult romance in search of love and belonging.
All right, nice. I think this is quite well done for a series logline, especially if you just started on this. But it does sound like a Status Quo show. This doesn't sound like a premise show. A premise show is one in which, remember, it's like Lost, right? We are building on every we have these big arcs with some big mystery to solve, some big long-term goals, or like you have to have seen all the previous episodes in order to understand what happens next. If that is the case with your show, then you need to kind of emphasize a little, like, the conflict a little bit more, or like what her goal, like at least suggest some kind of goal. Because right now this sounds like a half-hour like Status Quo show to me.
Okay. I need to learn more about premise and Status Quo because I'm not sure.
Okay. So yeah, the basics are, remember, Status Quo. You can watch them in any order, basically. It's like a sitcom, for instance. Is this kind of a sitcom?
No.
Oh,
This is, I mean, she's basically in search of a family and she meets all these characters and groups and there's a lot of drama and pain and
Okay, I'm not quite getting that, I guess, from the log line. You're saying she's... When you say goddess worship, do you mean literal worship of fantasy goddesses?
yeah, like Wiccans and pagans and cultish is the title. It's
Right.
like cults. She gets into all these different cult-like groups.
But if you say she's entering the world of goddess worship and radical feminism, that sounds like you're talking about the sort of, like, I don't know, goddess worship as, like, loving yourself or something like that. It doesn't quite... If you're saying she's joining cults, that's a different thing.
Well, they're not actual cults.
they're not.
The implication is that all this stuff is cult-like.
Okay.
No, like the goddess worship and radical feminism is like destroy the patriarchy, and if you eat meat, you're evil.
Right.
So,
But so do you see how the audience might not be clear that you're meaning she's actually getting involved with supernatural pagan groups?
well, I don't know what else goddess worship is like anti-Christian. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Radical feminism is man-hating.
Oh, I think we have someone who has an open mic. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself, thank you. Yeah, so you might just want to explain this in a way that is a little clearer. Entering the world of goddess worship, I'm not sure if I understand what that means. So if that means she joins a group, I could understand that. If that means that she, I'm having trouble picturing exactly what this is. So I guess maybe I misunderstood what this was at the beginning, and this is in fact a quite different kind of show than I thought it was. I guess we're gonna try to emphasize some kind of concrete goal for her. So just saying that she's entering a world isn't really a goal. That's kind of just like a setting.
The goal is to find love and belonging.
But that's an internal goal, not an external goal.
Well, she wants a family to join to be. She has no family, and she's just like trying out, like going from community to community to community.
So what's the conflict?
The members of the community, like for example, she finds community with the radical feminists, but the trade-off is she has to hate men. She finds community with the goddess worshippers, but a lot of them are not very good people.
So
she tries.
This just sounds like a very episodic kind of thing of the week to me. A premise show implies there's one sort of singular, longer journey that we're going on, rather than like a series of episodic situations.
Okay.
So if there is some kind of like a premise story would be like she's trying to find her mother who is in one of these groups, and she's like, that we understand that's the final end goalpost, right? And she's maybe joining different groups in service of trying to do that tangible thing. Or like just give her something more concrete than, I mean, I understand she's trying to find love and belonging, but those are sort of internal things that like only your character can say, I've found love and belonging. We can't look at someone and say if that's true or not. So that's what we mean by tangible goals.
Okay.
All right, so that hopefully that gives you some stuff to work with here. Oops, I just scrolled through a million slides on my trackpad by accident. Yeah, so it in terms of the a premise show it feels like we know what we're progressing towards, and like the kind of conflict that we're going to be seeing. Saying that someone's entering a world or joining different groups doesn't really imply a conflict in and of itself, because there's nothing like inherently stopping your character from joining those groups. Like who's the like if there's some kind of antagonist, maybe we'd want to know about that. Or just something getting in your obstacles in your character's way are really important to emphasize in these. Any questions on this?
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a question from the chat as well, from Barris Collins. What would you say is the best TV pilot displayed that you can learn from to write a pilot? Pushing Daisies by Brian Fuller. Read it, learn it, love it. Pushing Daisies, just Google it. Pushing Daisies PDF. Alien Boy 13. We have an untitled animated miniseries. Go ahead. Alien.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. When an embittered young man moves into a new apartment complex, he must navigate his new eccentric neighbors, which include the reclusive genius, the outgoing flirt, a dwarf woman with an attitude, and a precocious 8-year-old. Episode Logline. After his girlfriend broke up with him, an embittered young man seeking a new place to live meets an old friend that gets him into a apartment, which he's introduced to the eccentric tenants.
All right, thanks for this. So, a couple questions. What's the conflict? Is my first question. You say he must navigate his relationships with his neighbors. Why?
I guess because they have sort of personalities that he's not fond of, as he tries to
Then why does he have to get to know them? If he's not fond of these people, why would he even interact with them?
I guess he pretty much doesn't have a choice. He just need a place to live.
But I live in an apartment and I don't interact with my eccentric neighbors.
Uh-huh.
So why does he have to, right? So we're looking for conflict here, and if you're saying, think of a show like Community, right? A guy joins a study group of a bunch of eccentric weirdos, right? Because he needs to pass a Spanish class, and he needs to work with them in order to do that. So he needs to organize them and get them to work together. They come from all walks of life. There's an old guy, there's a crazy girl, there's a super Christian lady. They're all very different, but they have a common goal, right? Can you give them some kind of common goal that they are actually forced to be together or forced to work together?
Yeah. I guess I can. Yeah.
That would really help, because right now this just feels like guy moves into an apartment, he has weird neighbors, end of premise, right? In fact, there should be conflict that's inherent in this, and that we can start to see, that's going to be interesting to watch for, not just because there are weird people in one place, but because they are forced to work together, or they have some kind of opposition or obstacle they're trying to overcome.
Okay.
Cool. And I'm not sure why this is an animated miniseries. This sounds like a sitcom.
This is because me and an associate of mine want to work on this together. So he wrote the treatment of it, and I came up with the idea.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, no problem then. You're not trying to pitch this as an animated show. You're making it yourself.
No, we just want to make it. Yeah.
Okay, no problem there.
I'll gladly send some.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I'll gladly send some character designs for a show.
Oh, there you go. Yep. So if you want to work with other people, we have a channel called Collabs. So just scroll up in the text channels if you want to post in there. Any questions on this, Alien Boy?
No. I guess because I haven't written down the actual pilot yet. He just wrote the treatment, but I think I can work with changing it to make a bit more conflict. And you gave me some idea. Gave me idea to change it so he has a reason to interact with these people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Another good reason might be, I don't know, he's the landlord and they're always causing problems and he needs to fix the problems or something like that. Just some reason that they need to interact.
Oh yeah, I can work with that. Thank you.
Yeah,
yes, that's great. I can work with that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Alien Boy. Looks like we have. Do we have one more or a couple more? Missy. Okay. Go ahead and read this out, Missy.
Yeah, all right. Sorry, I didn't put though in there its format, so yeah, it'd definitely be 30 minutes. And it would definitely be a status quo. Hang on, that's what I remember what it was about. Hold on, I'm just trying to find it again. Oh, hang on up. Hang on up. I just found it here. Okay. Okay, here's my pilot or series logline of my English subtitled Spanish-speaking radio or TV soap opera Chica Diamante, meaning Diamond Girl. Okay. Will modern elite society Mexico City's ex-pauper, the jewelry design and diamond mine owner and tycoon Victor Fernandez's first-class wooings, chasings, and love letters to his secret since childhood crush Reina Sonora win her love, fashion design, and supermodel fame, and her parents' approval of him marrying her, making Reina rich and becoming his wife? Reina agreeably dates Victor, anxiously investigating if he, her secret since childhood crush, will love reciprocate her.
All right, thanks for this. So, couple questions. The first is that it seems like you are not quite sure on the format or the like if this is even TV or radio. Is that the case?
Much, yes, but it can be for either TV or radio. Yeah, but it's but mostly TV. Yep.
Okay, so you're gonna write this as a TV pilot, but just it has the possibility of perhaps a radio version or a spinoff or something. That's fine. I will say this is like a really, 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 really long sentence. I don't think a person could say this in one breath. And if you can't say a logline in one breath, then there's probably too many words. I get so lost in all the words in the middle of this first clause, which I think is a question, but there's so many words in it that I forget what the initial words are connecting to by the time we get to the end. Will modern elite society Mexico City's ex-pauper, the jewelry designer... It's like, wait, I'm already lost. So I would say reduce this to like, can you do this in 20 words or so? And just find the most important things to sort of emphasize here. Maybe instead of phrasing it in the form of a question, you phrase it more in the terms of like, when this event happens, that's what kicks off the story of like this conflict, right? So like find that inciting incident, find that one event that is like, we understand that's what starts the story. So when this happens, this character has to do this thing or else what bad result will occur? Like, what are the stakes, right? So it's got to be really simple here.
Good idea. Thanks.
Sure. Any questions about that?
Oh,
I mean, I think punctuation would just help. Instead of shortening it, just add punctuation.
Sure, that's true. Some punctuation would help. So, Missy, did you have any questions that I can answer on this?
I really didn't. Yeah, how can I, make it only a 20 word long sentence? It's tricky.
Well, I mean, you can write a 20-word logline for like the movie Inception. Is your premise more complicated than the movie Inception? I would hope not, right? So like you can summarize any story in a very small amount of words. So be like concrete and spare, and we don't need a bunch of extra backstory or details. We don't need to know that he's an ex-pauper, jewelry designer, diamond mine owner, and tycoon. Like just pick one of those things rather than giving us all of those things. You might say, just tycoon. I get what that means. So like instead of using a lot of words to elaborate and give the full picture, give us a smaller but more like condensed picture of what's going on. So I would suggest trying to use the template that we have here. I'll post it in the chat one more time. So this is when Inciting Incident. And that's the first like thing that kicks the story off. An adjective protagonist. So I'm not quite sure who the hero of this is. It is... This is the tycoon Victor Fernandez, the hero that's the main character of the show?
He's the main character. Well, kind of. Well, it's more that Reina. She's the main character of the show. It's a monologue, but it can be made into a duologue if I or with more characters if I so wish. But it's more where she's actually receiving the love letters from Victor. So so she's the main character, but Victor, he is the hero, really.
Okay, so the I guess I use the word hero not really in like a moral sense. It's not like who's the good person or whatever. I use hero and protagonist pretty interchangeably. So normally the protagonist is going to be the person that we're following primarily. It's like their story. They have to be the most active person to like accomplish a goal. And like in a romance, sometimes you can say it's going to be split between the two people to some extent, but usually there's still going to be one main character in a romance. So I would try to find the event that kicks this all off, and start with that. Tell us just a simple description of your main character, just a couple words. She's trying to do this tangible thing, and then with these stakes. Make sense?
Yeah, of course. That's a good idea. So maybe, do you think a better way I could word it is when Mexico City diamond tycoon Victor Fernandez elitely woos his obsession, the fashion designer Reina Sonora. Reina dates him to investigate if he's going to love her in return.
You're at a good start here, but like the only reason anyone dates anyone is to investigate whether they are gonna love them in return, right? So I think you had an interesting element with they were sort of childhood crushes, right, or something like that. So maybe that could be mentioned in the logline as well. But you were definitely thinking along the right lines of when, and you don't give us the names. The readers are not going to be drawn in by hearing the names, and it's just kind of a waste of words. So when a Mexico City tycoon woos his ex-childhood crush, a fashion designer, she has to then blank. So you're definitely along the right lines, though.
Okay, that's a good idea. Oh yeah, by the way, sorry this is off topic, but what do I have to click to find in here the link that you sent me?
You would have to scroll up, but I can just send it to you directly if you want. So it should show up in your private messages. In the top left, there will be a little pop-up like a notification. Here, let me link it to you right now.
Where will I find it when you link it to me?
It'll show up in the top left. You should see a notification in the top left of your Discord window. Do you see it there now? There should be a little red 1 that pops up. It's like, you have a message.
So let me see, Let me see. So let me see. I'm on the left of the screen. Okay. So do I click the? Oh crumbs! This is tricky. So right. So you said it's at the top.
So
okay.
If you're on a desktop, if you're on a phone, it might be a slightly different setup. But yeah, well,
I'm on my cell phone.
You are okay, no problem. So we're still streaming at the moment. So let me just finish up, and then once I stop the stream, we can help you and we'll make sure you get the link. Don't worry.
All right, sweet. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have other? Looks like we have one more logline to do, and then we're gonna wrap class for today because we're 20 minutes over. Let's hear from High Key.
Hello.
Hello there.
I just barely got that in on time. I just want to say that.
Yeah, you're 18 minutes after the end of the class, but you're okay. We're in overtime mode, or what do you call it, after the game. So read us what you got here.
Okay. The series logline or
everything that you posted here. So title, genre, logline.
Okay. So the title is The Travelers Outside of Time. As for the genres, it's sort of a soft sci-fi with action and adventure themes.
Okay.
And the logline is, when going to bed, a young teen finds himself in the place outside of time, which looks like a large infinite library. Now with the new responsibility of keeping track of time itself, with the looming threat... Oh, wait, I messed something up. Now with the new responsibility to keep track of time, with the looming threat of a small yet powerful group of travelers who wish to learn all of time to make themselves immortal.
All right, thanks for this. So I think there's some typos and just like issues in the writing here that are making this a little unclear. So, but let me just make sure I get the basics. So every time he goes to bed, a teenager shows up in some kind of dreamlike library that allows him to control or otherwise. What do you mean by keep track of time?
So you notice how I said so infinite library, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who put the books there in the library?
Okay, good question.
That every so often a random teen will be picked to start writing out their part of their timeline.
Oh, keeping track of what happens?
Yeah, sort of writing it as it happens.
Oh, writing like history, basically?
Yeah, as it... Think like a journalist writing down their journey, more so than the journey itself.
Oh, okay. So it's his... And so is he going back to his normal life when he wakes up?
Yeah.
He is. Okay. So only at night, he basically can never sleep. This is kind of like terrifying in a way. But so every time he goes to sleep, and first of all, we don't want to describe your main character as young because it's like you just gave it. If you say teen, we will know what you mean. So pick an adjective that actually describes an element of his personality or like who he is. Young is not an element of your personality. So he finds himself, and cut a bunch of words here. We don't need to say in a place outside of time. He finds himself in a cosmic infinite library or something like that. Would just be a way of describing all of that. And with the new responsibility, to keep track of time, I guess you're saying it's his job to kind of record history in these pages.
Yes.
But the threat of a small group of evil time travelers, they're trying to... What does it mean to learn all of time?
That's where the weird stuff comes in that I'm still trying to work out.
Is he trying to keep bad guys out of this library?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
There's more than just him as well. I
Okay.
could probably put that in there as well, but...
Alright, so he becomes almost like an employee of a weird cosmic library?
Yeah.
Okay, so so your series Logline might be like, in his dreams, a nerdy teenager or whatever teenager becomes a librarian in a strange cosmic, or becomes a record keeper in a strange cosmic library and must, defeat or keep out or whatever, must defend it from evil time travelers who plan to steal the books or something like that. I think that's a little more concrete than they're trying to... I think you're saying that they're trying to... If they read through them all, then they'll gain some kind of power?
Well, think about it. If you read the entirety of history, you're immortal.
No. Why?
Because you automatically know what's going to come and what already has come to you.
But we can read history now. Sorry, let's just one person talk at a time, please. Sorry. But so we can read history now, though, can't we?
Yeah. But you can also read the future, which is... I'm still trying to work that part out, whether if the future exists already or if it doesn't exist and that's why we're writing it. It's still trying to figure that part out for me.
Okay, so you're saying that this isn't just history. It's, in fact, it contains people from all kinds of timelines, so you can predict the future by reading things that haven't happened yet.
Yes.
Okay, I don't think it would make you immortal unless it just would in the magic of your world or whatever, right? It would certainly give you insights into things that will happen in the future, and that's something that villains could use, isn't it? I mean,
that's more so what I mean by immortal.
Okay. So maybe then he's trying to defend a cosmic library from evil time travelers who, or we could say, villainous thieves or whatever, who want to use the knowledge of the future for evil.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bunch of advice I just gave you to try to condense this down and make it just clearer and more to the point that we understand what we're really watching. Because we want to know it's just you've given us the rationale of kind of what the villains are doing, but we just need to know what your hero's trying to do. He's trying to defend some books from bad guys.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, just simpler, clearer, and less words.
I actually have a very long Google document, and by very long I mean a full 3 pages of nothing but me from 2011 as of tomorrow.
You mean of outline for the script?
Did I just say 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah.
11 years ago?
No, I meant 1 year ago.
Oh.
21.
Okay.
Excuse me. Got my decades off, excuse me. About a year ago, I started working on this. I kind of took a step back from it, though. It seems like I've gotten a lot down, though.
Okay, great. So, yeah.
Question.
Okay, we have a question. Go ahead.
Cool.
Yeah. This actually sounds like a really cool idea, but if you're gonna include like bad guys in it, back off time terrorists. Don't use that time terrorists. I already got the title.
Okay, I don't think he's calling them time terrorists. I think we're good.
Okay, so weird thing. I had another idea for the villains, but I'm not really sure on it at the moment. Whether I'm going to do this idea or the idea that I originally had, which was a lot more complicated, put simply.
Okay, so I guess for right now, I would recommend probably going with the one that's more developed and that you have like a simpler expression of. And we're 30 minutes past class time now, so I will have to cut it. But come next week if you want more feedback on the second idea, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Thanks, Heike.
No problem. Thank you for your time, by the way.
No worries, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to read back Missy's revised logline. We're not going to go deep into it, but I'll just give my quick thoughts on this. So when a Mexico City diamond tycoon woos his obsession, a fashion designer and supermodel, she dates him, her secret since childhood crush. I think we know what you mean if you just say childhood crush. But investigating if he'll reciprocate her. So again, that's just what dating is. That's just like using more words to explain what a relationship is. So I think that if you're explaining what the conflict of the show is, it should be like emphasizing what's keeping them apart, what's actually stopping them from being together. That's kind of at the heart of romances, right? So a diamond tycoon tries to woo a supermodel and fashion designer. I'm not seeing a conflict because there's nothing inherent in those people that says to me, oh, a diamond tycoon could never be with a supermodel, right? No, of course they would. So, like, I think if you want to use those last words to emphasize, like, why is this going to be a difficult journey, right? You'd want to say, and she must keep the secret of what? She's a werewolf? She's actually poor? Like, what is actually going to cause problems here beyond just the regular problems of any relationship, right? Because I don't feel anything inherently keeping apart an oil tycoon and a supermodel.
Here's what's the conflict bit that's keeping them apart is they're both very shy, and Victor Fernandez, he's an ex-pauper, and so because he wasn't born into elite society but had to work his way up, he at first wasn't well, he was always liked by Raina's parents, but they just didn't consider him to be a good enough provider for Raina if he had married her. So so he's wanting to he's just afraid that that just because he wasn't born into elite society that Raina's parents won't approve of him, even though he's now a rich man and no longer a pauper.
There's really a risk that her parents wouldn't approve of her dating a diamond tycoon because he wasn't born rich?
Yeah, just because he wasn't born into a rich family. Yeah.
So is it that, like, he doesn't have it's like, I could see maybe somebody who becomes
not
very
sure.
rich... Go ahead.
It's more that he's just not sure that he's just not sure, nor knowing that they're going to approve of him. That he'll be suitable for Raina because he's now a rich man, and no longer a pauper.
It's just a bit of an abstract conflict to me. It feels like the conflict is mostly in his head. I don't think most parents would have... It is. Oh, it is mostly in his head. So it sort of feels like the stakes are kind of fake to me. It feels like it's just, he's wrong. So I think with high concept romance stories, especially if it's going to be a telenovela style story like this, then it needs to be just like a clearer conflict or contrast between these people. So maybe I could see a version where if, for instance, he started poor, but he grew, but he later in life became rich, maybe he doesn't have any class, right? You can be like, maybe the sort of theme of your show could be money can't buy you class, right? So if he acts like a poor person, even though he is rich, I could easily see a conflict there, because his parents are like, because Raina's parents would then be like, he eats McDonald's every day, and he drives around in a big gaudy limousine. Like, he's not the kind of rich that we want you to be with. Do you see how I could sort of start to see the cultural clash and divide there? And it wouldn't just feel like something in like a neurosis in this one guy's head that he's like, what if they don't like me because I wasn't born rich? What if there was some actual, like, if you're not born rich, that can cause some kind of cultural divide, can't it?
Yeah, he's just worried. It's just more he's just anxious and worried that they're not going to like him when he doesn't realize he's deluded by it.
But that just feels like
That's
an
the
unsubstantial.
conflict.
That just feels like an unsubstantial conflict to me. If he thinks something that it's entirely delusional, it's not really reasonable, and moreover, it's not really even true, the conflict doesn't feel really real. I mean, I guess I would just try to find something that is more clearly keeping these people apart, other than one of them is like wrongly thinks that maybe her parents won't like him.
Also, but since he was a child, he did have low confidence just because he wasn't rich, and that's why he thought that Raina was out of his league, and that's why him and Raina have always been too shy to confess their crushes on each other, and that's what's been keeping them apart. So basically, shyness has everything to do with it.
Okay, so is he like cripplingly shy and eccentric, or anxious, or like is that a huge problem in his life?
Well, it's just more that he's very shy when it comes to Raina, because he's super obsessed with her. Yeah, and because he is a shy person generally. But it's just, but not like not in a crippling way. It's just more where he thinks Raina's out of his league.
Okay, I guess I'm just like spitballing and shotgunning ways that I think this could maybe work at this point, because right now I'm still like this doesn't feel like a substantial conflict if it's a romance where one character erroneously thinks maybe she's out of my league and maybe her parents won't like me, and he's totally wrong. Like, unless there is something actually keeping them apart, then it feels like just unsatisfying, I guess. So
I understand. Yep.
I hope that might give you some might get your gears turning or whatever, to start thinking of something that, like, I think there's room even in the setup that you have to find something that's keeping them apart in a more concrete way.
His parents haven't found out yet how much of a very good provider he is now that he's rich, and so that would have a lot to do with it.
They have no idea that a diamond tycoon is going to be a good provider?
No, not that. It's just more that they don't know that he's now a diamond tycoon, and so that's why, that's why he's not sure that they. That's why he's not. He doesn't know that they're going to agree to him marrying Raina. Like, they've always liked him as a person, but they just didn't consider him suitable for being Raina's husband. Just because he wasn't rich. That's all. Because they didn't want to see her go to poverty. That was all.
Okay. So I guess we have to call class. We're 35 minutes after class, so I hope that feedback has given you some good ideas here. Nacho has given you some more suggestions in the chat. Maybe a love triangle would kind of spice this up a little bit, or maybe Victor is poor and then becomes rich over the course of the story. Go ahead, Nacho, if you want to weigh in.
Oh, just wanted to add, if anyone else is planning to join the boot camp, enroll in the boot camp, but you haven't had a chance to sign up, you can click the little green checkmark emoji, and you can get immediate access to the bootcamp channels and start to join the discussions for the class.
Yeah, it won't. We had a question up there. Will it charge you immediately? No, nothing's going to charge you if you click that. That's just to indicate that you want to join, and we'll just give you access to the chat so you can start communicating with the other students and, like, workshopping loglines and things like that in our member channels. Okay, we're way over time. So I'm going to quickly bring up what's next at Script Camp so you can see what we're doing next. Here's the schedule coming up. Remember, table read Sunday at 4. That is later today. And many other things starting up soon. Playwriting starts next week, 6-week course, Saturday 2 to 4. Write a complete play in just 6 weeks. And here's the schedule for the TV Pilot Bootcamp. Again, remember, finalize your logline, fill out your sketchbook, and nail down that premise. All right, thanks so much for joining, everybody. Hope that you've enjoyed today's class and gotten some good feedback. So hope to see you next week for the first official meeting. Remember, you can get a free trial with membership, 2 weeks free, so you can come to the first 2 classes at the very least. And we hope to see you there. All right, have a great weekend, everyone.